Andrew here from the Revisionist Almanac. All the voting polls for the eligible categories featured on the 1967 episode have officially closed, and it's time to reveal the winners who will be officially added to the Almanac. I want to first thank my guests, Dana and Tom Duncan, for being part of the episode. They'll be coming back in 2025 for an episode on 1982, so look out for that. And if you love listening to them on this episode, be sure to check out everything they're doing with their own podcast by finding their show at the social media handle in the episode description. On to the voting. The three of us were unable to unanimously agree with any of the actual winners from 1967, so all 6 categories had different winner picks and therefore went to a social media vote. Best Supporting Actress was a 3-way race between the actual winner, Estelle Parsons from Bonnie and Clyde, Anne Bancroft from The Graduate, who Tom put in this category. We'll come back to that decision later, and Bea Richards from Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, the pick of Dana and myself. The voters agreed with our opinions about Estelle Parsons because she could only gather 11.8% of the vote and landed in 3rd place. I thought Dana and I gave compelling arguments as to why Richards deserved the revised win, but it was only good enough to score her 32.4%, which left the remaining 55.8% to the winner of the category, Anne Bancroft. She joins 11 other actresses in this category from season 1, those being Helena Bonham Carter from The King's Speech, Laura Linney from The Truman Show, Eva Marie Saint from On the Waterfront, Carey Mulligan from Shame, Karen Allen from Raiders of the Lost Ark, Michelle Williams for Brokeback Mountain, Uma Thurman for Pulp Fiction, Emma Stone for Birdman, Agnes Moorehead for The Magnificent Ambersons, Alicia Vikander for Ex Machina, and Juliette Binoche for The English Patient. With this wrapping up season 1, we can look back and see that only 3 actual Academy Award winners in Supporting Actress held up through the online votes, and 8 of my 12 choices for this category ended up as winners. Not a bad success rate if I do say so myself. Moving over to Best Supporting Actor, where we had 3 men battling. George Kennedy for Cool Hand Luke, who won the Oscar in real life, along with both Eli Wallach and Lee Van Cleef from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. In what was probably a case of being a victim of competing with another actor in the same movie, Lee Van Cleef could only manage the bronze medal with 20.6% of the final total. George Kennedy had some solid support on Instagram, but less so on other platforms, finishing with 28.8% and earning the silver medal, which meant Dana and I were able to successfully mobilize the votes for our collective pick, Eli Wallach, who pulled a healthy 50.6% and cruised to the gold medal. With his win, Wallach becomes the 12th member of the revised Best Supporting Actor category this season, along with Christian Bale from The Fighter, John Goodman from The Big Lebowski, Toshiro Mifune from Seven Samurai, Christopher Plummer from Beginners, Jack Nicholson from Reds, Jake Gyllenhaal from Brokeback Mountain, Samuel L. Jackson from Pulp Fiction, J.K. Simmons from Whiplash, Cary Grant from The Talk of the Town, Mark Ruffalo from Spotlight, and Edward Norton from Primal Fear. Just like Supporting Actress, only 3 actual winners of this category in Season 1 managed to finish with the revised prize, and over the full season, 7 of my 12 picks in this category ended up in the Almanac. Up next was the Best Actress race, which had 2 terrific women to choose from. It was a battle between Anne Bancroft in The Graduate and Katharine Hepburn in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. And yes, as I had to explain to a few people online who had some confusion about Bancroft competing in both supporting and lead categories, part of this show's concept allows for guests and myself to manipulate categories and nominate actors and actresses for supporting or lead, depending on what we felt was more fitting to their given role. Because of this leeway and Tom's unparalleled ability to tinker with categories, both Anne Bancroft and Eli Wallach were battling in the supporting and lead categories for their gender. So why do I say all of that? Because it took 12 episodes and a full year of guests and shows before we had this situation I'm about to describe have happened. Katharine Hepburn had strong support on Instagram, but Twitter tipped the scales this month in favor of Anne Bancroft. the final voting percentage for each woman being 60.8% and 39.2% respectively. This result means that Anne Bancroft is the revised winner in both the supporting and lead categories for 1967, either a sign she gave one of the great acting performances of all time, or an indicator that the level of competition in this year wasn't particularly strong. It's also worth noting that we covered two of Katharine Hepburn's actual wins in season 1, this and on Golden Pond in 1981, and in both situations she had her trophy taken from her. With the win, Bancroft becomes a revised Oscar winner, joining Natalie Portman in Black Swan, Cate Blanchett in Elizabeth, Audrey Hepburn in Sabrina, Kirsten Dunst in Melancholia, Isabella Adjani in Possession, Charlize Theron in North Country, Alfre Woodard in Crookland, Rosamund Pike for Gone Girl, Bette Davis for Now Voyager, Brie Larson for Room, and Frances McDormand from Fargo in the lead actress category. Just like the two supporting categories, only 3 actual winners in Best Actress managed to retain their Oscar after the voting. And in what was clearly my strongest category of the season for picking correctly, 10 of my revised choices ended up in the Almanac. Transitioning over to Best Actor, where voters had 3 men to cast their ballot towards: Paul Newman in Cool Hand Luke, Eli Wallach in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and Rod Steiger in the Heat of the Night. Dana was a huge advocate for Steiger's win being important, but the voting public was much more aligned with Tom and myself, as he could only muster 11%. Even though Tom manipulated Wallach into the lead acting category, he was less successful this time than his Anne Bancroft move because the general public was happy to give Wallach the supporting win, but only 15.9% of the vote went towards him in the lead category. And that meant that Paul Newman easily reached the finish line without any real competition, grabbing a monstrous 73.1% of the voting pie. Paul Newman has now become the latest revised Oscar winner in the lead actor category and joins Jesse Eisenberg from The Social Network, Jim Carrey for The Truman Show, Marlon Brando for On the Waterfront, Michael Shannon for Take Shelter, John Travolta for Blowout, Philip Seymour Hoffman for Capote, Tom Hanks for Forrest Gump, Jake Gyllenhaal for Nightcrawler, James Cagney for Yankee Doodle Dandy, Leonardo DiCaprio for The Revenant, and Tom Cruise for Jerry Maguire. This category was the one that had the most successful actual wins converted to revised wins, as 5 of the 12 leading men managed to keep hold of their Oscar this season. And of the 12 revised winners, 7 of those were selected by yours truly. We're up to Best Director category now. Once again, we had 3 remarkable choices to cast your ballot towards. The options were the actual winner Mike Nichols for The Graduate, Sergio Leone for The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and Jacques Tati for Playtime. I personally knew I was going to go out on a limb in picking Tati for his quirky yet intricately created film, and that proved to be true as he ended up in 3rd place with just 25.5% of the vote, but honestly that's more than I thought he'd get. Mike Nichols was the winner in 1967, but he only got a bit more of the vote than Tati, finishing with 28.9%, which left the remaining 45.6% to the spaghetti western directorial genius Sergio Leone. Leone is now a revised winner in Best Director and sits at the revised Oscars table with Christopher Nolan for Inception, Alfred Hitchcock for Rear Window, Lars von Trier for Melancholia, Steven Spielberg, who has 2 wins for Saving Private Ryan and Raiders of the Lost Ark, Ang Lee for Brokeback Mountain, Quentin Tarantino for Pulp Fiction, Wes Anderson for The Grand Budapest Hotel, Orson Welles for The Magnificent Ambersons, George Miller for Mad Max Fury Road, and the Coen brothers for Fargo. With 12 episodes in the books, only 2 actual directorial wins stood the test of time and kept their place in the Almanac, and of the 12 picks I made, 7 of those directors secured victory.
Have you ever wondered why a particular movie is considered one of the greatest of all time, or how Back to the Future measures up against Casablanca? Enter Greatest Movie of All Time Podcast, the show that uses a unique grading style to redefine what the greatest movies are. I'm Tom Duncan.
And I'm Dana Duncan. Well, using our patent-pending Stanley rubric, we've judged hundreds of films on their legacy, their impact or significance, their novelty, their classicness, their rewatchability, and then, to allow all of you a say, we even included some audience scoring from a few reputable places.
Yes, we've covered some great classics so far on the show, including Raiders of the Lost Ark, Casablanca, Back to the Future, Jaws, Gone with the Wind, Saving Private Ryan, The Dark Knight, and many, many more.
Join Tom and I every Wednesday for a brand new episode as we explore a new classic movie and see how it stacks up against the rest. Just a few of the movies we're talking about this season include the original Star Wars trilogy, Gladiator, All About Eve, Toy Story, Inside Out, and Barry Lyndon.
You won't want to miss out, so subscribe to Greatest Movie of All Time Podcast wherever you get your podcast, or in full video on YouTube, or follow us on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok at GMOAT Podcast.
Now it's time to get to the big one, Best Picture. Voters had 3 films they could back as the best film of 1967. The actual winner, In the Heat of the Night. My pick, The Graduate, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which was picked by both Dana and Tom. I'm sorry to say that In the Heat of the Night, which we all felt on the episode was worthy of being nominated for Best Picture, struggled to gain traction online and finished in 3rd place with just 15.1% of the vote. The Graduate certainly had some ardent supporters online, but even saying that, it could still only secure 33.6% and finish as the runner-up in the category, which meant the remaining 51.3% went to The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And this, of course, means Leone's iconic film is now a revised Best Picture winner and joins Inception, Saving Private Ryan, Seven Samurai, Moneyball, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Brokeback Mountain, Pulp Fiction, Whiplash, The Magnificent Ambersons, Mad Max Fury Road, and Fargo in the category for Season 1. In what might be surprising to some listeners, but is not remotely shocking to me, not a single actual Best Picture in Season 1 held up through the online votes and entered the Almanac. And of the 12 revised Best Films of Season 1, 7 of those were carefully selected by myself. I want to once again thank every single person that took part in the voting process at all during Season 1, on whichever social media platforms you used. Just a reminder, you can find and follow the show on Instagram, Twitter, Threads, TikTok, and most recently Blue Sky at the handle RevAlmanac, where the voting will take place each and every month. The more places you follow the show, the more opportunities you'll have to vote for the actors, the directors, and the films you're passionate about. And as always, feel free to send me your feedback with a direct message on any of the aforementioned social media platforms or by emailing into the show directly at revisionistalmanac@yahoo.com. This concludes the 1967 episode cycle and ends Season 1 of the show officially. But on the way next is the 13th episode and the start to Season 2, covering the 2016 year in film, where I was joined by 2 exciting new guests, Adam Freed from MovieArcher.com and the question queen herself, Heather Stewart. Did the 3 of us agree with the actual Oscar winners, such as Moonlight, Damien Chazelle, Casey Affleck, and Emma Stone, or did we bring other nominees to the table? You're just going to have to tune into that episode, give it a listen, and find out for yourself. Thanks as always for being here, and I look forward to seeing you next time.